Problems are present in the mission that takes astronauts to the moon. Welcome to a new documentary. If it is the first time, I introduce myself. I am the engineer Hiddekel Morrison and I appreciate you decide to see this educational content. Let us know, thanks to technology, the new details of the mission that takes astronauts to the moon with relevant information on the problems that arose. Let's carry out, together, this new educational adventure. From the perspective of an engineer. Let's start. The United States Space Agency, NASA, began its important mission that will return humans to the moon at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, deploying the Artemis or ARTEMISA program, an international space exploration initiative for a manned spaceflight led by NASA, U.S. commercial spaceflight companies, and international partners such as the European Space Agency, ESA, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, Canadian Space Agency, CSA, Brazilian Space Agency, EB, the Australian Space Agency, ASA, and the Mexican Space Agency, AEM, with the aim of re-exploring the moon and bringing the first woman and the next man. This mission is of great importance because the moon is already programmed as the most important base of operations in space, from where spacecraft will depart to conquer the planet Mars and where sources of water and energy have already been identified. But unfortunately, when the first stage of this mission, known as Artemis 1, began, problems were generated that we will explain below. But first, I ask you to support us by liking this video, sharing this video with your contacts, and subscribing to this channel, turning on notifications, so with your support, we can continue to frequently generate interesting documentaries on aerospace technology and the universe. Thank you for contributing to the creation of educational content. Establishing a base of operations on the moon is the most important space goal of the world's major powers. Despite the initial delays and the multi-million-dollar budget required to return astronauts to the moon and establish a lunar base, the first rocket for the Artemis mission in its first phase was put into operation in the so-called pre-flight dress rehearsal for the Artemis I mission that took place on June 20, 2022. The test of this first stage of the mission consisted especially in the filling of fuel tanks and the countdown. It was the first time that the giant tanks of the Space Launch System, SLS, rocket were loaded with fuel, but when the process began I have some problems. During propellant loading operations, launch controllers found a hydrogen leak at the quick disconnect that connects an umbilical from the tail service mast on the mobile launcher to the rocket's core stage. Although the engineering team tried to fix the leak, their efforts did not fix the problem. Faced with that situation, launch controllers developed a plan to mask the data associated with the leak that would cause a holdup of the ground launch sequencer, or launch computer, in a real launch day scenario, to allow them to get as far as possible in the countdown. The process required to develop the plan required a very long timeout extension during the countdown activities, but they were able to resume with the last 10 minutes of the countdown, called the terminal countdown. During the terminal count, the teams performed several critical operations that must be performed for launch, including changing control from the ground-based launch sequencer to the automated one controlled by the rocket's flight software, an important step the team wanted to accomplish. The problems that arose are of great value at this stage, since the preliminary test phase is precisely what it seeks to identify possible unforeseen events and incidents, to solve them and make the improvements that guarantee that when the launch operation is executed, everything is contemplated, although even then something could always go wrong. According to the plan and execution schedule presented by NASA this year 2022, the launch of the first phase of the unmanned rocket, called Artemis I, must be completed, then Artemis II will be deployed, which will be the first manned mission of the program in the year 2024, where it is intended to achieve the first manned moon landing. To then execute the ARTEMISA III mission, which is still scheduled for the year 2025, continuing with the ARTEMISA IV missions, up to ARTEMISA VIII that will take place between 2027 and 2031. NASA sees the Artemis or Artemis mission as the next step toward the long-term goal of establishing a sustainable presence on the moon and in lunar orbit, laying the foundation for private companies to build a lunar economy, and eventually sending humans to Mars, beginning in the year 2033. Also, NASA along with the U.S. Department of Energy are working to advance space nuclear technologies. The agencies have selected 3 design concept proposals for a fission surface power system design that could be ready to launch by the end of the decade for a demonstration on the Moon. This technology would benefit future exploration and be part of all necessary deployment within the ARTEMIS mission. The area where the first lunar operating base will be established is expected to be at the lunar South Pole, where it is intended to control and take advantage of the water ice reserves that exist under the regolith, especially in areas that are permanently in shadow. In addition to taking advantage of the illuminated regions at the lunar South Pole. What do you think of the schedule to bring humans back to the Moon and establish a lunar base? I would like to read your opinions in the comments of this video. As usual, we appreciate you informing us. It is a real pleasure to be able to provide you with the main news, trends and developments about the most important aspects of aerospace technology and the universe, from the perspective of an engineer. I am the engineer Hiddekel Morrison, and I invite you to meet again in a future installment.